I, I don't know. Joe said that via something he saw on Facebook. So, and he has not been on Slack, so it makes me think we should probably text him or something. I mean, we haven't heard from him all day, so that I know of.
I wish I
Where?
could turn off this stupid thing in Slack that's like, do you really want to tell the whole channel? Like, yeah, dude, that's why I typed at channel. Like,
Yeah.
there's no option to say, don't remind me of this.
Well, it's because we have people in like a million time zones.
I don't give a F. Turn it off the notifications if you don't like it.
Well, yeah. Relax. It's not that big a burden. You have to click two things instead of one thing.
It's a real
I
travesty,
I
is what it
used to
is.
hit enter, and now I have to hit enter and click a button. Just fine. Meanwhile, your Windows hasn't been updated in God knows how long.
I fixed it today, John. It's fine. It's I just don't use this
Uh,
computer, so I was like, it always was prompting me like while we were getting ready for the show, and then I would start panicking because sometimes those updates take 5 minutes, and sometimes why can't I fucking sometimes they
I'm
take
glad
five
we're live so people
minutes,
can see me wipe my nose with my shirt.
and sometimes those updates take like an hour, and like
Yeah.
brick your computer, you know.
Yeah. I don't know because I haven't used a Windows machine in
Oh, you're cool.
a long time. I
Cool
mean,
story, bro.
Eric, I am cool, and not using Windows is also cool. Oh, fuck. This guy, the cinematographer here has not done a ton of other stuff.
The other interesting thing that he talked about that I never really noticed, but that Mick Garris pointed out that he doesn't like to move his camera. That he prefers, and he said that it's true that he, especially if you watch Blackcoat's Daughter,
Mm-hmm.
he likes. He said when you lock the camera down, it was interesting the way he framed it. It like basically makes the audience captive. Like there's no escape of what you're looking
Yeah,
at because there's no movement. I don't know. That's kind of interesting.
it creates tension for sure.
I'm not sure I noticed it because there's definitely zooms in this in this
Yeah,
in this one
no,
anyway.
you're right. But there's no like he's
But
not
he was
tilting
talking
the
about
pan.
dollies and pans and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. There's probably some, but he definitely uses it way less than others. So
Here's a good pre-show topic. Did you know that
mm.
the XFL launches this weekend?
Yeah. Well, did you watch the Super Bowl? I felt like it was like 15 XFL
Oh, I
ads.
saw one of them, or like one of
Yeah.
them penetrated my brain.
Maybe it wasn't during. You know what? I also watched a college basketball game this weekend, and it might have actually been during that
Here's
that those
the
all the
here's
XFL
the even
ads.
crazier thing. It airs on my station, and ABC has sent no promotion for it whatsoever. Usually, they're sending launch promos out like months ahead.
Is it not on ESPN?
It's on a combination of ABC, Fox, and ESPN.
Yeah. I was watching the game I had on was on ESPN, and there was I would say every commercial break there was a
I was discussing this with Mark today. Like, I can't wait for this to fail because I don't normally feel that way, but like the hubris of Vince McMahon, like you, because what this proves is that he's been stewing for years about it, and that
Oh yeah.
he just, he's the misunderstood genius, and it's like, well, it just timing wasn't right, or I'm sure there's a million other people slash things that he blames it on, but it's like you saw what happened with that league last year, right?
Yeah. The
I
AAFL or
always
whatever it was.
say, I think first of all, I'm not even sure that there's a market for this horseshit, this kind of thing. But I think it's a huge mistake. I understand the logic in launching right after the Super Bowl and having a spring season. I think it's a huge mistake because you're literally contrasting the best football
Yeah.
event of the entire year with your rickety ass AAA football.
Well, I do agree with that. Like, why not give
It
everybody a break?
it should run in the
I,
summer.
theoretically, like the theory behind why there would be another league makes sense to me. It's so goddamn popular. Even if you get 1/10 the viewership, you can still run a profitable league. Like that's not insane.
I
So
feel like you give it like 3 or 4 months, like little breathing time, because in the summer people are like jonesing for NFL because they know spring training starting. It's like they're getting
yeah,
ready. They're looking at their teams. Like start in May or June or something. And just run like a 2 month
yeah,
season as a little like test pilot thing.
Oh, even 5-6 weeks would be like a reasonable amount of break, honestly.
Yeah, just I think it's. I mean, I get it. They're like, oh, people are still in the routine of watching football on Sundays, but it's just not the same. You're contrasting playoff football with your friggin' college burnouts you've hired for this league.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I
And
I
the other
also
thing
think
is, after the last debacle, did you read that? I'm sure you read that article, right? The like,
I read some of
I'm
it.
mostly excited for like the think piece that's going to come out after XFL flames out, but it like they chronicles all of it. Like, there's going to be a great podcast. It's going to be great.
Well,
But like
part of it's you just need to have way longer financial runway than those guys have.
but also like
they
the players got so screwed in that last one that I have to think a lot of them thought twice. Or, I'm curious to see if there were guys who were like, you know what, I'm good. I'm gonna just keep selling insurance or whatever I do.
Don't give them too much credit. I mean, look, like there's guys who they probably don't feel like they have a ton of options. There's folks playing, Eric, like you got to keep in mind, some of these guys go play in like international football leagues where there's hundreds of fans watching them. The games are not televised. I mean, they're getting paid, literally nothing. I mean, so the options, if this is what you want to do with your life, are very slim.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. It's like there's tons of labor.
I'll definitely check out week 1 just out of like curiosity.
Oh, there's no way.
I mean,
don't
I'm
know
not
if
saying,
there's a universe where I would watch
I'm
it.
not
I
saying
didn't watch
I'm
that
gonna.
much NFL.
I'm not gonna sit and watch a whole game. See, I would have watched a lot more this year, but it falls during nap time.
Yeah.
So if we don't put something on most of the time to occupy
the older
one,
yeah, I know,
then it ruins your whole afternoon. So like, my football watching was pretty limited. Other than like I forced it a little during playoff season because that's like I like the playoffs.
Do you not have like an iPad you can give her and just like go sit in your room with the iPad?
We don't do that.
See, you just give them the iPad, but you lock it down so that they can't do anything.
We don't ever put screens in front of them like that.
Yeah, but you're putting the TV in front of her.
It's very different, I think.
I don't know. That's an untested theory.
Okay, well, it's my working theory.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're the one that's losing in that.
That's fine. All right, I'm making sacrifices, John.
Well,
so
and part of the issue is
like
we have 2, and it's like, well, we have more than 2. But when the one's napping, if the other 2 don't want to do the same thing, or they start fighting, well, no, you have to give the other one another screen. I don't have 2 TVs in my house, so what am I going to do? Like, I got 1 TV, so.
Yeah, we're not really at the arguing over what to watch. Although, I don't know, we get this other thing where if she doesn't want to watch TV, but I want to watch something, she'll go turn it off. She's like, no more TV. And I'm like, no, I'm trying to make her understand the concept of like, I'm watching TV.
Yeah. Yeah. They might never get that.
So anyway, the XFL. I can't wait for it to flame out. As a fan of car wrecks, pretty excited. Because like, what is it even? Do they have any footage?
No. Well, I mean, I guess we'll find out this weekend.
The thing I saw during the Super Bowl was like a title card.
Eric, you should add Joe. He's getting upset, by the way.
Well,
he is pinging, just to be clear.
Sorry, John. I was riveted by our conversation.
I know. I didn't want to stop you. You were really riffing there, so.
Oh.
Hello,
good.
Hello, spooky pals. We're live.
You could have had a bad bitch. Not committal. Hope you put your cold real. Just a little.
Okay.
I mean, are you gonna stop there? Or are you gonna like finish the whole thing?
No, this is gonna go on all night.
There she is.
Cece.
Hello, Cece.
What up?
Sasai. Sissy, I was hoping that you would return with your Daughters of Anarchy look that you had last week. It's on the live page.
Her like first purge look.
Well, so last week it was like 30 degrees, and today it was 75. So yeah, no Daughters of Anarchy today.
That's tough.
All right, so I'm pretty much ready to go. I just need to grab a little more water. So we'll get right into things. I think, John, I'm gonna try something slightly different. Like, let's get into it. Let's take like a quick second to just like break down who Oz Perkins is. I'll call on you for that.
Yeah. Well, wait. Shouldn't you do it since you were just listening to an interview with him? I mean, my God.
Listen, we'll do our thing where you talk and then I'll just jump in. How's that sound?
Okay. Great.
You know that.
Just jump in.
Where you start talking and then Eric immediately starts correcting.
We'll
you.
do-
No,
we'll do-
I'm unfamiliar. Could you
we'll-
just let me know how this is gonna go?
You'll see. We'll do the review. Coming out of the break, I was going to mention that it's Women in Horror Month. It's your big month, Joe.
Who decided that? Sounds like a bunch of women.
Yeah, these
The
are great things.
patriarchy.
These are great things you should definitely say in the show.
We
But
should mention, and Cece, you could probably talk about it better, but the new issue of Grimm,
Well,
that's out.
Joe, my
Okay.
plan was to use the Women in Horror Month as a segue into talking
Let
about
me tell you what we're going to do first. We'll do Women in
CC's
Horror.
article. So CC, then I'll have you just talk about Grimm, the article, and whatever. You run with it.
Okay.
You do what you will.
I mean,
No, I need some
sound-
more direction from the men, please.
Cece, I saw a commercial.
Yeah.
Your kind you can kick footballs, and
All right, save
after
it.
some consideration, the
Save-
crowd will. All right,
Save
I'll
it for the
this.
show. I like
Some
this.
consideration.
I like where this is going. Let's save it for the show.
Oh, my
Um,
God.
And then let's quickly. Do we know what next week is?
Stand by. I had it up. There is something in the theater. It's The Lodge.
Yeah, we're
Which-
definitely not doing that.
Well, I think it's a big director is the thing, or it's like a.
You know what I'm seeing in theaters? Birds of Prey, and it's gonna be great.
Riley Keough?
It's the director of Goodnight Mommy. It's a female director, so if anyone wants to get that in,
For
just to
women
say
in
anything.
horror? Okay, maybe we should consider this then.
It's actually a woman and a man. They partnered, so we could go either way on it. I'm just
They-
saying.
they
For
made
women
a-
in horror.
a
For
film,
women
baby.
in horror.
This looks pretty good.
No, I think it looks good too. Yeah.
It's a family retreat to a remote winter cabin over the holidays. The father's forced to abruptly depart for work, leaving his 2 children in the care of his new girlfriend, Grace. Isolated and alone, a blizzard traps them inside the lodge as terrifying events summon specters from Grace's dark past.
So
What are you
we
saying,
should. I was gonna say we should check if it's available. It looks like it's playing in New York, but not at a ton of theaters. So
Yeah, I'm gonna say I've never heard of it, so I doubt it's playing around me. And also, I can't see a movie in the theater this weekend.
I mean, Joe,
but-
you can just say
Yeah.
that.
What?
You can just say that.
I just did.
Okay. I'm just saying you don't have to be like, oh, this is terrible. Nobody wants to see. You can just say like, I don't want to go to the theater this weekend. That's what I'm saying. Just
Did I?
cut to the chase.
Did I say that?
did I stutter?
Only once
mean, you-
prompted.
You're welcome to
Do we have
have
something?
somebody film.
Do we have something else by a woman director in the queue, John? Like something streaming
no.
or
Actually, no. I don't actually know any other female art. No, I'm kidding.
Jesus Christ.
Fucking Wayne's World, I know.
All right, Blumhouse.
Penny Marshall.
That was a joke. I'll have to look.
All right,
it
I'm
up.
gonna
I
get water
don't-
real quick anyway, so I'll be right back.
It is
I thought you guys wanted to do The Fanatic. Isn't that your boy Joe?
Did I fucking say I refuse to see this movie? What the fuck was that?
No, the Fanatic. Isn't that
Oh,
Limp
that's
Bizkit?
streaming on
I mean, it was
Amazon.
pretty good. I was impressed.
oh,
with
you
it.
saw
Wait,
it
you
already?
saw it?
Mhm. I already watched it.
Oh.
Yeah.
God.
I
The
mean,
reviews
is it-
were the reviews
is
were
it-
bad.
Well, okay, but you have to. I mean, the reviews are bad, but you go in knowing it's Fred Durst and John Travolta. So like, I mean,
So if you're
It
on
was what I
drugs, it might be a fun time. Were you
I
on
mean, I was
drugs when you
sober when I
watched
watched it. I should have been.
I've been doing so much drugs, guys.
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
So
many
much
drugs.
drugs.
I don't know. I'd have to go through these. I don't know what was directed by who. I might need to. I think I need to be out anyway next week because I have to travel on Tuesday.
I was gonna say it would be better for me if we didn't go to the theater, but I know you can always get a stand-in. So
You can just say that, Cece. You know you can just say
I,
that.
I, I
You know you can
literally
just say
just
that,
did.
right?
You know,
You
you can
know you
replace
can just
this
say that.
female with the like 1 or 2 other females. Like, you know, we're all pretty interchangeable.
We already. Cece, you got a whole month here, all right? I don't know what you're getting so upset about.
The shortest fucking month.
Yeah. Well.
I mean,
didn't
to
vote. I didn't
John's
get a vote.
earlier
It
point.
is also my birthday month, so yes, it is my month.
Oh, we're also going to mention this website whose list we're on. Did we tweet about this?
Sure did, buddy.
Cool. Thank you. Can you guys hear this?
Beer guts.
Can we?
Little piece of Mark on the show every week. We're recording. Everyone, please stand by.
Welcome to Bloody Good Horror.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Bloody Good Horror. My name's Eric, and I'll be your host for this evening, where we will be reviewing Gretel and Hansel. They reverse the name. It's a thing.
To confuse you.
Yes, I'll be the host tonight. Joining me, first up, to usher in Women in Horror Month. Please welcome, from Hotlanta, Georgia, our very own Cece.
So is this the only time I'm going to be introduced first? Is just because I'm.
No, you get introduced
All
first.
right, You've had your time. Just no dancing or no none of your Latina agenda, all right?
Oh,
In
God.
fact, Cece, last week was January, and I introduced you first then. So,
I know. Well, last week though, I was preferential because I had been gone. You know, I
Right.
had been avoiding you all for a month. So.
fine, you are now first
Justify
every
itself
week.
time he wants to introduce
It's
you first.
decided. Next up on the show, he comes to us by way of Chicago, Illinois. Please welcome Joe.
Hey, everybody. I currently think I'm going through what they call menopause, so I'm in solidarity with you,
Okay,
CC.
I definitely want to hear more about that later. But first up, lastly joining us tonight from Manhattan, New York City, the business manager.
Manhattan.
Typical.
Fitting.
Typical.
Hey, this month it's Woman Hatton.
Yeah.
Manhattan. All right, I give up. Please welcome John to the show.
Hey guys.
Anyway, we're here
No.
tonight to review.
Hey, lady.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me. Hello, everyone.
Damn it, John.
That is here.
Hello, equals.
Yes.
We're here tonight to review Gretel and Hansel, Witch Hunters. No, just kidding. That's only in my dreams. This is directed by Oz Perkins. John, who is Oz Perkins? You seem to know a lot about him.
Known to me as son of Anthony Perkins.
Creator of the Perkins restaurant chain.
Yes.
Hell of a chicken
Fries.
fried steak.
Yeah, there you go. Previous director of I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, which we reviewed. I think we actually reviewed back to back with his other movie, Blackcoat's Daughter. So Blackcoat's Daughter, I think, got a limited theatrical and then went to streaming. I Am the Pretty Thing that Lives in the House went straight to Netflix. And I would say it had like a nice little.
Oh, I
had
forgot
a
he
bu-
did I Am the Pretty Thing. That's interesting because that's actually super different from the rest of his movies.
We should talk about that. I think there are moments. I did mention in my email, so I see how it went right over your head. That's fine. But yeah, I mean, so this is his third movie. He is in a lot of ways not horror icon, but he's a horror. He's horror royalty. And I mean, I will say I was very hyped because he had his name on it.
Yeah.
You know, I think coming off of Blackcoat's Daughter, he definitely he got some attention.
I like
Yeah,
how
you know,
you were
in terms of
saying
that.
you were hyped when for like weeks before this, anytime it got brought up, you were just derisively being like, you're just making
That's-
this face.
That is not true.
It's
That was
100% true.
based solely on the fact that you thought this was like the most John-looking movie of all time. No, I was very interested to see the movie.
Sure, sure you were. That's fine.
I never said anything different than that.
Okay, sure. Anyway, you know what can help make you excited about things? Alcohol.
No, I actually no idea.
Manopause.
Cocaine.
the answer is alcohol. And that's why every week here in the show, Mr. Joe brings us a beer recommendation. So, Joe, without further ado, let us know what we are drinking tonight.
Beer guts.
This better be a White Claw.
I do. I have some Vista Bays next to me. But tonight, this is probably not a first, but it's been a while. I am currently drinking the beer that I picked for tonight's show. So, Gretel and Hansel, a fun little tale of some kids traveling through the woods, encountering a witch, and all kinds of magical, mystical things happen. And in honor of magical, mystical things and witches around the world, and Cece, I want you to help me with the accuracy of this, but I believe witches are known to use the word abracadabra.
No, that's right. That's authentic.
Yes.
That's witch
1000%.
lore.
Yes.
So I picked a beer from the good folks at Bell's Brewery. They're out in Comstock, Michigan. And this beer is their Arabica Dabura.
Oh.
Yeah.
I see what they did there.
Yeah.
Like a
do you? Because
coffee?
I actually had
I didn't. What? Can you explain
Isn't it? Is it not a hop? I just assumed it was a hop varietal.
It's a Arabica bean, a coffee bean.
Yeah.
That makes
I
sense.
got that, Joe. I'm smart.
Thanks, buddy. I actually looked up and listened into the pronunciation just to make sure I was going to say it right, because I kept doing it in my head and just a lot of stumbling. I'm really proud of myself. So this is a coffee stout, as you might have guessed, that they use locally grown Arabica beans in the brewing process. I'm a huge fan of coffee stouts.
Wait. Where's this from?
Michigan, which I guess they grow coffee in
I
Michigan.
thought you could only grow coffee in like tropical environments.
I don't know. Maybe. Oh, sorry. Locally roasted Arabica
thank you.
beans.
You know
I
that
saw the word
famous
locally and I just
strain of
skimmed over.
Michigan coffee beans.
Yeah.
It's got a little.
So anyway,
It's got a little picture of the farmer on the back that harvested it.
they use lactose in the brewing process as well. So it's a coffee milk stout, so it has like a little bit of a sweetness to it. Which usually I'm not big on sweet stouts, but this one sort of balanced with the coffee is very, very good. And I'm a big fan. And it only comes in at about 5.5% alcohol. So you could, in theory, drink these for breakfast as your little wake up morning cup of Joe.
I mean, it is February, right?
Yeah. It's dark outside when you're getting up for work. You need a little something extra. Bell's Brewing, they distribute, I think, throughout all of North America, probably up into Canada too. They're pretty well known and pretty big. I like all their stuff, so I wholeheartedly recommend this one and any of their other stuff they put out. Bellsbeer.com is their website, and there you go.
All right. Thank you for that, Joe. I got to admit, I'm slightly disappointed because I was under the impression we were going to be getting a legal weed review here in the show tonight.
So here's the thing. I sent you guys a picture of that. I forgot what brand they even were. I couldn't find the picture, but I took some edibles on Saturday, and those things did absolutely nothing for me.
No.
Well, this is the review. You're giving the review right now.
Yeah, but I don't have the name in front.
I can dig this up.
Yeah, if you guys have it.
How-
So it was the nice thing about it. So I've bought a few, mostly chocolates and gummies, and the problem is they all just taste like bong water. But these were mint chocolate, and you couldn't taste it at all. I was big fan.
I'm not gonna lie. I love the taste. It's funny, Joe, because you also hate alcohol taste. You have this thread of like you like the drugs, but you don't want to know you're taking them.
Yeah, well, I mean, I like a tropical drink. I've actually, over the years, or like 2 or 3 years since I've seen Kyle last, I've grown to like the taste of gin. I don't think I would drink it straight, but like my, I progressively weaned myself off of, a ton of tonic in my gin and tonic. I mean, it's one of, like, you remember in high school, like I hated the taste of beer. And then I went to college and I hated the taste of beer, but I was too embarrassed to admit at, keg parties that I wasn't going to drink the beer. So you just force yourself.
Did you just say you remember?
You remember, right?
Right.
I just meant all of us in general. Like nobody takes their first sip of beer and like.
No. Oh yeah.
middle
Yeah.
school
Oh yeah. I
Christmas.
see. I see what you're saying.
Oh, I love
you're
this.
relating to me. Yeah. No. I got you. Yeah. No. Your first at least 4 years of drinking beer, you are actively forcing yourself not to vomit so you can look cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Hold on. How many years? I think
I don't think I
acclimated much
liked
more
beer
quick.
until I was like out of college. Like actually liked beer.
So what are they?
Alright.
These are Incredibles, Mile High Mint, Cool Mint Milk Chocolate, This is a medical cannabis infused product and not a food. Or whatever. So these were when I read it on the site, they were a blend. So it was like a few different kinds of, what is it, like THC? Are they put in there? I have no idea. What's the stevia and the sativa?
Boy. Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever it was.
Listen.
It did. I felt like I was like 300 pounds on the bed and not high, and I wasn't sure if I was just tired from running or from the weed.
It sounds like if you felt like you were 300 pounds,
Yeah.
you might have been a little high.
I definitely said like I'm not feeling it. Then Leslie and I got up and went in the kitchen to get something to eat, and I'm like, oh, maybe a little bit, but like not.
I mean, it might have just been the strain.
Yeah, like a couple of weeks ago, we took these different chocolates, and like those for sure, like I was feeling happy.
Honestly, I'm not gonna lie. I'd like to expand this idea. I'd like to know a little. Like, I want to get all the rundown. I want to know about your experience. But let's workshop it for the future.
Yeah, sure.
Love it. Why is this funny to you guys?
Take notes. I need him to take notes like while he's high so
Yeah.
that he can come back and
Yeah.
like
Like
give us in the moment.
We
Just
need
like-
video notes, and then you can splice them in.
He's all serious
as
on his little.
commercials.
He's got a little moleskin, and he's just like, cannot understand what my wife is saying to me.
I don't get it. It's 11 o'clock. Limp Bizkit needs to be loud. Fucking kids.
All right, love it. All right, guys, it is time to review Gretel and Hansel. Let's take a quick break and do just that.
This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. The prime time. Main feature.
And we're back. John,
Eric,
did you watch that there Super Bowl the other night?
I did.
Mm.
Saw some of the Super Bowl.
What was your favorite commercial?
Ugh.
I gotta say, I was
I w-
slightly disappointed. No surprise, Cloverfield.
Yeah, no, it was a letdown. I agree. There weren't really any movie ones, were there? Or not.
There was
the
a-
Fast
There was a
Nine.
new trailer for the Black Widow, like a newly cut thing.
Didn't see
Yeah.
it.
Looked awesome. I want to see that really bad.
Yeah, the movie looks good. I agree.
Wasn't there a James Bond one also?
There was a James Bond.
There
yeah,
was a
you're
James Bond one. I have zero thoughts on James Bond, but that looked cool too. I could watch
Yeah.
that.
I got the James Bond trailer in front of Gretel and Hansel. It was like the full one,
Oh
and
yeah, so did
totally
I.
agree. It was like, yeah, I might watch that. No, so I'm not one of these people that camps out for the commercials. I watch the game, and then when the commercials come on, I like pound gross foods into my face. So I was not paying that much attention.
Leslie and I
Interesting.
are the other way around. I literally will pause it for the commercials and then fast forward through the game.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's-
I just don't get up early because I want to see both. If I get up, it's probably during the game. All right. Anyway, that was cool.
Fair
I have
enough.
no segue. So, John, please bring us the word of the day.
Eric, today's word is sigil. That's S-I-G-I-L. I will just say up front, I stole this 100% from one of CC's emails. So, hat tip, as they say. A sigil, an
No,
inscribed.
thank you or
Man.
nothing.
Man, taking credit for a woman's work again here.
Wait, I gave credit where credit was due.
Hat tip.
Jesus
Okay.
Christ. I don't know. What was it? Send her $5? Like, in any event.
Are you
Here's a
saying her?
slight nod. Now back into the kitchen with you.
Yeah, John, are you saying her work isn't worth money?
Oh, boy.
Oh man, I
Is
can't
any-
wait for this.
There is any of it. All right, sigil. An inscribed or painted symbol considered to have magical powers. It can also mean a seal, or more generally, I would say a sign or symbol. And it comes to us from the word sigillium. Sigillum.
Hmm.
I don't know. Late Latin. My Latin is famously poor.
Sigillum. I hardly
which means
know.
sign. You heard what?
Nothing. It's a terrible joke. Keep
it's
going.
Sigillum. Yeah. All right. Fair enough. This was an interesting one. So I don't know if you ever do, when you Google a definition and it'll show you the word use over time. And especially for a lot of words like this, where I
Does
consider
this guy know how to party or what?
I consider like an old word. No, usually it's like peaked in 1910 and then it kind of drops off. Sigil has just gone wild. Like the volume is like at its all-time high right now. So
Well, you know what?
it's
I bet you it's Game of Thrones because I had never heard of that word. I don't think until Game of Thrones.
It's a good call. Good
Yeah.
call. And that's possible.
All right, thank you for that, John. John, please tell me about Gretel and Hansel.
Well, Gretel and Hansel, more commonly known as Hansel and Gretel, is the story of a brother and a sister who get lost in the woods. They end up at a witch's house, and at least in the folklore telling, the witch tries to cook them, and they escape from the witch. This is it's interesting because it's not a modernization, but it is definitely a sort of reimagining of that folktale. I'll say, like, I actually have read this story to my kids. Like, we have a version of Hansel and Gretel. It's very kiddie, so I don't
How
know.
1980s of you, John.
No, I was gonna say, like, I don't know how true. I don't know which direction the original. I think it's originally a Grimm fairy tale. I don't know in which direction the Grimm story goes. If it leans more this direction, which has a lot of way darker shit going on in it, or in the sort of more, I don't know, kiddie version. But here, the main changes to the plot are that you have Gretel and Hansel here. Gretel is now the older child by a significant amount. She's probably 13 to 15. I don't know if we get an official age, but and basically she's living in a town that is beset by pestilence, I believe is how she describes it. But there's some kind of famine going on. There's just not food. It's gloomy, unlike anything you've ever seen. It's definitely sort of Middle Ages or sometime in that kind of the dark period. So her mom essentially throws her out. There's a sequence where she is essentially sent to a whorehouse, which she does not know is a whorehouse at the time. And there's a very awkward interaction. She escapes from that situation, goes back to her mom. The mom tells her, listen, you can't stay here anymore. The father has died. The mom's experiencing, definitely some depression and just, real stress at dealing with the sort of surrounding environment. And so Gretel and Hansel's probably 7 or 8. They head off into the woods. They meet a huntsman or sort of I don't know, a guy who can shoot arrows out in the woods, and he gives them a map and basically tells them where to go. And on their way, they end up at a witch's house. And the rest of the story kind of follows the regular fairy tale telling, which is that.
John, that was the manliest description you've ever had of anything.
Just the guy who walks out back every day and fires a couple arrows into the middle of nowhere.
Hold on. How would you describe what that dude does, though?
He's a forester.
Oh,
all right.
There you go.
What does anyway? We should come back to that. I'm actually curious. Like, what a forester
Maybe
did.
Maybe Cece should start doing the word of the day.
Yeah. Maybe
Listen,
CC should mansplain to you with it.
for Women in Horror Month, I would gladly. But
Oh, I only get it for then.
yeah, well, what is a tryout? And any,
March 1st. Back to the vacuuming with you.
Gretel and Hansel. So they end up at a witch's house, and the I would say the second 2 acts of the film, or the second and third act of the film, are really about their interactions with this witch and sort of what's to become of them. It's sort of clear she does not have their best intentions at heart, or at least not all of the time, and they don't necessarily know that right away, but it comes to light.
So quick interruption there, if I may.
What? No. Please.
So a forester in medieval time was more a position that was like equal to a sheriff or like a law enforcement officer. So really he like patrols the woodlands for like, to make sure that nobody's like poaching or like doing things they're not supposed to be doing. So like they're kind of an extension of the law.
All right.
Wow.
It's a car also, isn't it? Isn't it like a Honda Forester or a
Subaru.
Subaru Forester?
Subaru. Cece, what'd you think of this?
Well, I'm a huge fan of Oz, and we're on a first name basis, so that's why I call him that.
He went by Osgood here. Did you all notice? He did the full name
he did.
in the credits.
I guess he was trying to, I don't know, feel vintage and medieval. I absolutely love The Black Coat's Daughter and would say that it's one of my favorite movies. So I've always been a huge fan, and I was super stoked when I saw this movie was coming out. I was a little put off by the negative reviews that I was hearing about it. However, I really, really loved this movie.
Who might those negative
think-
reviews have been from?
Well, I tried not to read any reviews, but Twitter likes to tell you that they're not very good reviews. So I don't know. Did our site have a bad review about it?
No,
or
I was
did
I
my
was talking
Japanese-
about people sitting here with us tonight.
Ooh.
Oh, well, that's okay. Well,
I don't
nobody
think she
wanted
lets
to
any
go
of
with
our
me.
reviews bother
Yeah,
her.
yeah.
I had to go see this movie by myself.
So
because
now we
nobody else
know
wanted to see
Cece-
it,
now we
so
know
I just
Cece didn't read the
mean
email.
everyone. But no, I think that I think this movie is definitely a lot more layered than it's being given credit for. And I mean, I'm a huge proponent of the original Grimm fairy tales. I think that we should see more reimaginings of them, especially like John said, it's pretty similar. I mean, it's a little different. Like they end up trying to eat the witch's house, and that's how she kind of catches them, and then the witch like eventually tries to like plumpen both of them up. So it's in the same realm. I really appreciated that there was more of a witchier vibe between, or like a connection between Gretel and the old witch, and I really appreciated the nuance and like the character development between the two of them. I wish we would have seen more of that, but we can get into that later. But visually also, this movie is stunning, and I totally wanted to watch it again after I finished it. So yeah.
All right, Mr. Joe.
I mean, those are all good points, but I'm gonna tell you what actually is the.
Can't wait.
No, I don't know how to even start this. So I'm so on this movie, and I don't disagree with anything Cece said. And actually, as we've been discussing it on email, I kind of want to go back and watch it again. But I enjoyed everything she's talking about, and I 100% agree. Like the visuals, they have some really great stuff here. There's a lot of like silhouettes, and like especially when they're walking through the forest, like backlit with like this creepy red glow. Like I completely agree. I thought it looked great. I think the stuff that Cece's talking about, I just wanted more of. Which is funny because I know Eric and I have joked around a lot about like anything between like an hour 40 to 2 hours is just obnoxious, but this clocks in at an hour 37, so like an hour and a half with credits.
They had 3 minutes to play with here,
and
they didn't even,
I honestly I feel like I needed like 15 minutes more of this, or like a little more expansion on especially some of the interactions with Gretel and the witch, because like that's the stuff I really enjoyed, and I felt like everything was a little bit rushed, which kind of left me just like not really having much connection to this movie throughout the whole thing. So yeah, I don't know. I 100%, like I'd be interested when this comes out on Blu-ray if there's like a director's cut lying around somewhere that kind of flushes things out a little more, because I feel like there's some really great moments in here. It's just like you get like maybe 5 minutes of them, and I could have used a little more.
John.
Yeah, I definitely come down a little more in the Joe camp here. I would say that I love the idea of this movie, and I actually
I love
would.
the idea of women.
Jesus Christ.
Just
All right, that was a low
Yeah.
blow.
Come on,
they start slapping their gums though, ain't you?
I'm just teasing.
come on. No,
Horror month is my favorite month right now.
no. We were joking earlier. Eric has been sort of pointing out that this is like the most Schnars movie, of the year potentially. And actually, you're not terribly wrong. I actually, this hits a lot of notes that I really enjoy. I think the cinematography is gorgeous. I think the score is really, really well done. And there's a lot of moments that I liked a lot. To me, it was a little uneven. I think if I had, so this is Oz Perkins, like of the 3 films, this is the one that, I don't know, it's like the most ambitious, but it also feels like it misses in the most parts. I I actually think it shares a lot of similarities with the other films, including I Am the Pretty Thing. One of the biggest problems I had with this was the voiceover and the way that he really leans on voiceover to convey emotion that honestly I don't think needed to be conveyed. I think you could actually strip the voiceover out entirely and lose literally nothing. I mean, it's a lot of it's all told in Gretel's voice, and it's actually just telling you what's happening inside her, which in some ways to me shows sort of lack of confidence in his abilities to bring her interior life out on the screen. And I actually think the film achieved most of that. And it felt a little over the top, not even over the top. It just felt unnecessary and almost pandering to sort of spell it out. Now, it's a PG-13 film. I think there was a little bit, if I had to guess, there's a little bit here of them not knowing. And when I say them, it could be the studio, it could be, executives and not Oz Perkins himself, but not knowing who this movie was for and sort of over rotating a little bit on trying to make this maybe a bigger film than it could or should have been, when I think it could have been a really, interesting, compelling artier horror movie. So I would say I still ended up more positive than negative, but I was definitely let down, and it didn't really get to sort of like as strong place as I would have liked it to.
That's pretty interesting. I'm not like messing around. Like, I'm very surprised by some of the like more negative reactions to it. I loved this movie. I wasn't exactly sure what to expect. I'm a huge fan of Blackcoat's Daughter, obviously. This thing is just like, it's economical, like it's like small economical like fantasy horror. You know what I mean? It's like he is crafting these really, I think, beautiful visuals. He's got actually a really well drawn world, like the little subtle things, like the you mentioned, John, the state of the place where they live in the beginning. I actually thought that part was really scary. It's so funny, like filmmakers spend so much time and money trying to show like what a sort of broken down post-apocalyptic society looks like, and here in like 2 scenes you feel how desolate this place is. Like this world where literally this mother is running her children off because she can't protect them or feed them, and if they stay, something worse is going to happen. I mean, the mother's also like kind of crazy,
She's got
admittedly,
some stuff going on.
but
she's going through some things.
Even that, like, I loved those little subtle touches, like those just cold stone houses, right? And like everything is bathed in this blue light, and it's cold and like inhospitable. And then they leave and they go on this journey and they find this witch's house, and there's smoke coming from the chimney, and suddenly it's warm, and they go inside and there's food on the table. He does really interesting things with light, where there's colored glass in the witch's door, so like there's really stark like red light and yellow light that's being shined in the house, but it's all warm, right, in contrast to the other stuff. Just these really cool visuals with these like liberal use of smoke machines, which I'm always way in on. Lots of real spooky scenes of like these sort of what I assume are, I mean, I don't know if they're visions or like if it's a ethereal coven or something, but lots of visions of like other witches out in the distance kind of watching them while they're on this woman's, in her sort of like living in her house. What I think this movie does that is so neat though is that it's not 2 things. One, it actually doesn't do what a lot of fairy tale horror films do, which is think they have to add too much. Like, they've added a backstory here, but it's actually really simple and kind of economical. And the other thing they do is add this really great nuance, which I think really kind of makes the film, is that it's not just a horror film where they run into a witch and she's scary and they can't get away and they're trapped and they're just trying to get out. Like, that's kind of the like the mainstream studio way to do this movie. But there's actually this like weird, almost kind of sweet / sinister at the same time camaraderie between the older witch and Gretel, and we learn that like Gretel has this power inside of her, and that there are scenes where the witch is sort of like, the witch has taken to her in her own weird, creepy way, but she sort of wants to show her that like that world out there isn't for you. I can show you how to live with these powers and thrive or whatever. And there's obviously a darkness to it, but there is a weird, sweet like relationship between the two of them that's also scary because this woman who plays the witch is like frigging terrifying and so well acted. At the same time, they're developing this bond with the little brother and how he plays into things. And so that to me is where the film really shines. I do agree that I would have loved to see that stuff have a little more screen time to develop. The monologue thing is interesting. For me, the biggest one is like it begins and ends with a monologue. They had a backstory to the witch that I wonder if it would have been a more effective film if you just left all of it mystery in the beginning and then had her reveal this information to Gretel later on. And I guess I understand your point, John. Like the film ends with I actually really liked the ending. It's interestingly.
I like the way the film ends. Just to be clear, I just don't think it needs to explain itself as much as it.
Or maybe just a little less. But I love the visuals of the ending and where they take Gretel's character. So, and the score. So the score of this movie sent me down a rabbit hole over the last couple days.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked it up on Spotify. The score is by this guy who only goes by the name Rob.
Stop.
No,
Yeah.
look it up.
Makes them super easy to find.
If you're gonna go with a one name, artist name.
I
that's
think
tough.
he's European because a lot of what he's scored is European. It's like Rob period or something.
Is it like ROOB
No,
or something?
Just
Oh,
Rob,
geez.
like your bro from college, Rob.
Just Rob.
Bro
So
from college.
good old Rob. He also did the Maniac soundtrack. But what I love about it is that, while it fits really well, it's actually a lot of like synth wavy kind of stuff, like 80s retro synth inspired, which is so interesting to me as a juxtaposition to essentially a medieval setting. But gives it a great kind of retro vibe. I've listened to this score, no lie. I saw this 3 days ago. I've listened to the whole album probably like 5 times. It's really good.
I really like the score, and it kind of goes back to what Cece was talking about with like the lighting as well. I really like those two things because they definitely keep kind of hammering home that you're not watching like a period piece. Like this isn't The Witch. Like you're watching a fairy tale. So the synth in the score I feel like does a really good job of like you're not just hearing like violins in the background or something, which are going to make you feel like you're just watching like an 18th century movie.
Yeah.
Like they do a very good job with in like the windows that Cece was talking about, like making sure that this isn't just set in this time period. Like this is a fantasy film, right? And I thought that was a really interesting choice.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, the synth music, because it doesn't fit, kind of makes you feel like, oh, this is magical. It's a magical thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a really gross film in a way that I loved. There's some like very because that's, I mean, if you think about, to me, the things that endure from that original fairy tale is that it's a gross story, right? It's like this abundance of food, but she really wants to fatten them up and eat the children. Like there's a really like visceral grossness to the story, body horror almost kind of thing that I think they really nail here, especially with this one scene with these like pile of body parts that maybe we can talk about later. That's like just the CGI in that scene was fantastic.
I just think that it's a really, I think that he really, as a director, accomplishes what he's going for with this, like, this combination of, synth music, these weird visuals, like he's giving you, like we're saying, this fairy tale setup, but he's also weaving in references to other fairy tales, which kind of bring home, like the whole time, we know it's about Hansel and Gretel, but there's all these references to wolves, there's all these references to huntsmen, and you're kind of given these, I don't know, these winding roads to kind of like fill in the, like there's also like some weird Alice in Wonderland references too, like with how big the rooms are versus how little the doors are and things. Yeah. So I just really like how, I don't know, like altering that feels. And I don't know, I think that really helps.
This is why I was conflicted about the movie. The piece you just mentioned, the interior space of the house, and frankly, like the set design of the house in general, was one of my favorite parts.
It's beautiful.
I would like to point out that I mentioned that in my first email, and you guys ignored me. And then Cece came in with admittedly a bunch of really smart things to say. but my feelings were a little hurt because you guys were both like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I will reconsider this movie after I literally had sent like 10
Hold on.
threads.
I would have agreed with you, but I didn't read your email. I'm sorry. I didn't want to read it before I saw the movie.
No, this isn't about you, Cece. This is about
I-
these two.
Eric,
Mhm.
hold on. Don't ever think that I was reconsidering anything. No, I mean, what I was getting to is you both hit on things that I really enjoyed, right? I mean, and a lot of it has to do with set design. It has to do with the sound, and I would say overall the direction I really liked. For me, it ultimately is about the script and just again the sort of lumpiness, right? So Eric, you mentioned, because I hadn't even necessarily thought about it as much, but the way that the witch's story is sort of unfolded here, I found it to be distracting and frankly like detracting to a certain extent from the main thrust of the film, right? And so this, like, we don't even need to get into the spoiler. Actually, I'll just say that you're introduced to this witch pretty early on. And it's through the voiceover. It's essentially explained as a fairy tale within the Hansel and Gretel fairy tale. It's a fairy tale that Gretel and the people in that surrounding town sort of told each other, and the way that ends up being pulled through the rest of the film, it just, I don't know, it just doesn't land, and they spend so much time on it. It actually, again, you're not into the main action of the film. You're not with the witch, and Gretel doesn't meet the witch until almost, I don't know if it's midway through, but it certainly felt longer than it probably should have been. And just one other point really quick on the forester. He's listed as the hunter in IMDb. So, but that character, he's introduced and like kind of feels like it should be a thing. Never comes back to it.
Well,
Yeah.
Okay, let's. Which I totally agree with you. I mean, I do think that it could have. I feel like it, because it's a PG-13 movie. I was giving it a little more leeway in its dialogue and especially the voiceover, because I hated the voiceover. Like, I'm with you. I would have much rather like just kind of had this open-ended, like, this is how you can interpret it however you want. But I think that the way I understood it, even if he's not a forester, if he's a huntsman, the reference, I don't know how else to jump into it. So the parallels between the witch and Gretel and how they form this bond that Gretel and the mother didn't have is really interesting, and is especially interesting when you see the brother who is used as this foil against this like feminine magic, this feminine power that Gretel's coming into, especially because like there's references to her like coming into womanhood, or they're asking if she's still intact. Like there's all these references to that. And then the brother who
we're just gonna breeze past intact right now. Is that
John,
No.
are you intact? John?
That's literally what this like the dude at the beginning of the movie asks, which is
Joe,
like,
Joe, you know John's not intact.
I've never heard it referred to that way, and I was sitting there and just like, oh, Jesus.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a little
I was
aggressive,
like,
but that's the
cool.
point. I mean,
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
it's supposed to be jarring, but I think that it was, and I think that's what I know that's what I'm referencing earlier when I was like, there's a lot of subtlety to this movie that I think gets kind of watered down with this voiceover and the pandering to a younger audience, which is totally fine. I mean, I think it's a great introduction to like higher art house type movies.
do we think it's?
But
Why do we think it's pandering to younger audiences? Just curious. I didn't really get that.
because like the voiceover explains so much.
Well,
Yeah,
I
it's
think,
too
I mean,
explain-
that's why to me it feels like potentially a thing where somebody at a studio was like, hey, we'll put this in a
Right.
theater if you make this make a little more sense. Like, I just
Totally.
maybe
And
not,
yeah.
but I have to wonder.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I was assuming, that they were like, this is great, but I don't understand what's going on, and if you want this rating, then explain it.
I mean,
because it did
well, I
seem a
don't-
little
yeah.
like,
I'm not even sure it would be a rating thing so much as just the studio
Well-
being like, we're not going to put our money
Yeah, they
behind
wouldn't
this
promote
unless,
it.
yeah. I
Well,
don't know.
especially compared to Black Coat's Daughter, where you gotta read a lot into that movie.
I don't.
to know what's
I don't
going
think it
on.
makes a lot of sense to me to put this in theaters. Honestly, like it feel like as much as 2020, 2019, like we're in a period where you can put art house films in. It's small. It's really like a low budget thing that I feel like you blast this out as a Shudder exclusive and like people fall in love with it. You know what I mean? Like, and maybe they just maybe they are thinking like, oh, maybe it is the next Witch or something. You know?
The trailer, I think, too, like doesn't do it any justice, right? Because the ones I watched, at least, definitely set it up as kind of like this creepy, like
Yeah.
some real nasty shit's gonna go down, and it's really not that at all.
It's more of a
which-
fantasy film.
Yeah, which I think is also like my expectations when going in were like, all right, I'm gonna see some like Blair Witch like nastiness going on and like leave the movie, like
See, and I would
making
actually highly disagree in the first act. Like I didn't feel that it dragged at all. I love all the little subtle visual touches. Like this scene where
It's not that it
they
dragged, just really
No.
quick. It's that it's like there's so much going on, but it ultimately doesn't have anything to do with Gretel and the witch, which is what the film's actually about.
yeah, I don't think like
it
there's
didn't
anything
bother
I
me
would have
because
cut out. Like,
I think it's a lot of just setting up like I don't know. I think it's showing how vulnerable they are. Like I really loved this scene where they fall asleep in what they think is an abandoned. First of all, even on a good day, these stone houses I think would make me kill myself because they're just like the most depressing. They're sleeping in like hay bales, and like they fall asleep in what they think is an abandoned house, and this like monster zombie thing like wakes up and just like
yeah, what the
screams
hell
at
was
them.
that thing?
That was at the hunter's house, right?
No,
Yeah.
no. This was before
Well,
they
the
even.
hunter
Oh,
was
the
just
hunt. That's where
there.
the hunter shows up. Yeah, that's where the hunter shows up. But no,
Well, like,
I
we
don't know.
never like to John's point, like we never really got any sort of like go back to that of like what the hell that thing was.
Well, I mean, it just shows that, like, so the whole point of the story is how, like, the outside world is so, intense and sad, and there's all these, like, monsters that,
Right.
because, like, her brother straight up asks her, like, what are you afraid of? Are you afraid of the world? And she's like, no, I'm afraid of this power. And it was really just kind of a, instead of a jump scare, you get this weird, creepy ass dude who just,
Yeah.
like,
But I actually think
mean-
I actually think it tracks though because you've got a movie. So again, this is not a movie where they're being held captive. They're like willingly staying with this woman, and so I think you have to set up a world that there's nothing for them, right? A world that's
Yeah.
so
Right.
scary and threatening that like it makes sense that they're not immediately running from this creepy witch house, right?
I guess,
Because they
but,
have
like, then
multiple conversations
why-
about one of them wanting to leave, the other one convincing them, and then it's kind of switches. But I don't know. I think this opening stuff is actually pretty important to the world
I guess-
building.
Then why not? You don't explain that creature that we get in the house, but then you take like 15 to 20 minutes of an hour and a half movie to explain the backstory of a witch.
I think I just
like something that
assumed-
we all
Well,
know.
I think I just
like,
assumed that he was like a near death, because like
Yeah, I mean, I just assumed it was a dude who was like starving, who's
Yeah.
gone crazy from like starvation,
Right.
because that's the whole reason is that the mom sends them away because there's nothing for them, and that she can't feed them, and that's kind of the basis for Hansel and Gretel anyway. And it's kind of an allegory for being hungry for power, for like being hungry for this ability to take care of yourself. And I think that I loved the backstory of the witch. I do agree with John that I think that the witch probably should have like explained it to Gretel as opposed to this like choppy kind of weird story. But I think that it's really important to see the backstory because there's all these, and I mean, maybe I'm just reading into it this way, but like there's a lot of underlying maternal and feminine themes in this movie, and
Yeah.
you have to see that so that it parallels Hansel and Gretel's mother and why the witch is the way that she is and how she ended up that way, because it also is kind of like her story is very paradoxical to how she's acting towards Gretel.
Yeah,
which is-
that's totally fair, and I do think
Yeah.
that's the right like, and this is where I had said over email, you like when you unpack some of that stuff, it did give me a little bit of a different appreciation. Again, not that the like maternal stuff is like totally lost on me, but
Right,
like-
but it's, I mean,
well, and I think though, again, I the argument I would make is that it could be done. There is a more elegant middle ground. There's a
Well,
like
Here's the
I don't
problem, because
wanna
here's the
hammer
problem with the opening voiceover is that regardless of the content, I think we've all been trained at this point. You hear opening monologue explaining the backstory of the universe, and literally, I think for people who are trained to kind of think critically about films, it sets off an immediate red flag in your head where you're like, what did you screw up in telling the story that you had to go to the beginning and tack on this explanation?
well, 100%. No, and look, and here it's where
It
I
almost
guess
it
for
almost
me-
always works. Like if you think that, it almost always is bad.
Yeah, no, and I actually think the film could have stood without it. I actually look, we don't know that much about the production history. I think you guys are probably right that it may have been added after the fact, and I say that mainly because Oz Perkins has shown that he can do a lot without it. That said, I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, if I remember correctly, it's like only voiceover the whole movie.
Which and a lot of people love that, and that's my least favorite of his movies.
I agree 100%.
It's interesting because I absolutely like one of the most stunning visuals in the film to me, and it's so simple, is this like progenitor witch, I guess, this witch who turned, spoiler alert, like we find out the original witch. It's not really the thing is, like, she has this great black costume where her face is covered in this kind of angular hat. It's just a really neat visual. I love the way they showed her. But like focusing so much on her in the first act and telling her story and turning this child and blah blah blah, it's like you expect her to come back in the end or to play into the that witch isn't involved in the story at all, right?
Well, no. So the actual like witch is the daughter. And
no, but the old witch in the house is the daughter. But I'm pretty sure the woman in
the
all...
old witch in the house is the mom.
Well, yes,
killed her daughter.
Okay, I understand that. But what I'm saying is somebody turned her into a witch. That woman in all black.
No, her daughter did. So like it's this whole like mother daughter, like, because that's the whole conversation she has with Gretel, is that Gretel sees her brother as a child, and she's like, he's holding you back from like becoming what you can become, and then kind of explains the story that she gave up her daughter because she realized her daughter was this bad seed.
Right, but then who was the woman in all black that turned Gretel?
That's the mom. She says, I took on this guise as this old crone so that people would think I'm nicer and that people would come here, because basically everyone knew that like she gave up her daughter.
All right, never mind. I changed my mind. This movie doesn't make any sense.
Maybe you like this so much because you didn't understand it, Eric. Maybe that's the problem.
Yeah, I want to go back really quick because I think the point that Cece was making earlier, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding it, or that this is
mansplain it to us, John. Please.
No. Well, because I actually think it makes the movie more elegant in a certain way. So the hunter, I think the idea is like he was a setup for the brother. All right. So like
because basically like this whole time you have this like very feminine, like basically it's the witch trying to teach Gretel that she has all this power of being a witch, that if she gives up her brother, because with this power become like basically in witch lore, basically nothing's given without being taken.
Finally, we're getting witch lore.
I'm just like gonna lay it out there for you. So basically, like, to take something, you have to, like, to receive something has to be taken, and that's what she's trying to explain to her, that you have to give up your brother. He's holding you back, and you're not going to ascend to your highest power because of this burden, which is
she also wanted
basically
she wanted her to eat the brother. That was like where it got a little.
That's true too. I mean,
you gotta get rid of him somehow, John.
Yeah, it's two birds with one stone. So basically, the whole time you see the brother as this physical being, but also like a very physical power, because he's wanting to become a huntsman. That's the whole reason of them going through the forest, is to get the brother to the forestry or whatever of huntsman. Oh, yeah. So that's why he
monastery,
and she's going to go to the monastery. So basically you have a very feminine power versus the very physical power of like masculinity. So yeah, I mean, like there's more elegance there. It's just a very
they could have brought that
thread.
Forward, right? Like they could have brought that forward. Like just bring the hunter back at some point.
Well, but they didn't bring the hunter back, but that's the whole reason that like he's always sharpening axes, or he's always like he's got these saws, and like it I thought it was really fascinating that the whole time the witch is showing him like how to sharpen the axe, like how to sharpen these saws, and it's very menacing, because you're like, okay, well, that like she's eventually trying to chop him up, and it's a play on the masculine power and how it's used against you.
I'll be honest, it didn't really bother me that the guy doesn't show up again. I think the part of the reason why it stands out is that it's just not a movie with a lot of actors, so he's kind of prominent for that little section. So then I mean, I understand expecting him to come back.
I mean,
we've also established that you didn't understand it, Eric, so that's probably why
okay,
you either.
All right, Joe.
No, but it's where, like, I actually think the point that Joe made earlier, the movie's an hour, it's actually an hour and 27, at least according to IMDb. So for under 90 minutes, like, you actually had a little room to work here, and I don't know, there could have been a little more meat on the bone. Look, I actually love, and Cece,
I like that pun there.
Well, yeah, there you go.
Ew.
But I think, and Cece hit on a lot of stuff through the email. I mean, some of the stuff you've been talking about here, like there's a lot of thematic elements that are really interesting. Even so, like the whole idea that the brother is the poison. Now it's all like coming back to me. The brother's the poison. That's why she has to consume him because you have to
Right.
consume your poison.
Yeah.
I don't like. I like it all in like standalone bits. I do. There's just in time. There at a certain point, it doesn't all cling together as much as I was hoping. Even as beautiful and sort of well directed as the film is, that was I guess where my hurdle is.
I
but-
thought the scene where she tries to poison the witch was like really. I think that's a good little example of just his directing here because it's very simple and economical. And it's like in the previous scene, she's teaching her how to like draft these things, and then she leaves and she kind of looks up the recipe and she tries to poison her. And there's just this great like almost Hitchcockian scene where the witch is they're having a conversation while the witch is about to drink the poison. The witch totally knows what's happening,
Yeah.
and then there's this slow reveal. That was just like that was a really great scene.
Yeah. I mean, that's where
Well-
things like really kind of kick up, and that like I guess
Mhm.
that's what I'm saying. Like I really would have loved more of that, and that's
where
that's
it gets
what I
it's
felt.
where it gets really intriguing, yeah, because it's like where those layers start to come out of the witch is like. I mean, it's calling it affection is maybe a lot for what it is, but it is. It's almost like a camaraderie or like, hey, I'm gonna
Oh, it is.
show you the
It's
ropes,
like a
but like
respect. It's like
respect. Yeah,
I mean,
that's
she tells her, she's like, it's like this was a great, like the way you've mixed this is perfect. Like I wouldn't have known, but she does know because she's older, she's wiser, she's more in power. So I mean, I think that like again, the subtlety is just so impressive.
yeah.
And I know you kind of mentioned it earlier, but the scene where you were talking about that the witch kind of like dribbles out of this puddle that's in
Oh.
her basement
Oh yeah, that's
was phenomenal.
That was
like when it was
such a-
happening, I was just like, oh, okay, that was super impressive.
It was a cool visual with the perfect little like music stinger underneath it
Yeah.
to like highlight it. It was really neat.
And I
The,
even really, I mean, not to like get too much into it. I mean, I know we've already kind of talked about spoilers, but I will say like the climax of the movie, like I was really impressed with the like how stark it was in matching the rest of the movie visually, but that it was still handled really well in a very like isolating type of way that made it feel as intense as you would imagine
The
it to
design,
feel.
the design in that room was really neat and like made you just
Yeah.
feel super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. It was awesome. I think again, like my complaint was just like it was over in like 2
Yeah.
minutes.
it was really fast. Eric, you had mentioned earlier that voiceovers tend to be sort of a screenwriting kind of red flag. To me, the other one that this movie does, like it's almost over the top levels, is dream sequences. It's look like I think they're actually not that bad here, and there's a reason, and it works sort of in the structure of the narrative. But when you have a movie where most of the quote unquote threats or tension are things that are happening in dreams, like it's a little dodgy, right? Because what it does is it builds that tension, but then immediately removes it. And here they because they're in this house where there is a sort of an ever-present threat, it lingers, I guess. But I don't know that. I think that was another problem. Again, I know I keep hitting on the fact that there's just sort of an unevenness. I'm trying to kind of pinpoint some of the factors, and like to me, the dreams. I think what they lend themselves to is amazing visuals, but it does mean that narratively, just the structure tends to be it gets a little wishy-washy.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like once they get to the cabin, you're kind of in this dreamlike state for the entire thing. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
thought they actually
which I
worked
liked.
really well, kind
Yeah.
of going back and forth. Like, I
Yeah.
thought they blended together
All right.
really well.
But then you actually don't know where you stand, right? Like, is this like, are they really? Is like the witch?
Yeah, but
Did he
But I
really?
kinda
think
liked
other-
that.
But I
Like,
think that, yeah,
I
that's
thought
kind
that
of
was-
part of it. I mean, that's the whole point of a fairy tale to me.
It's a
I
fine
mean,
line to walk.
Are you
Like,
saying you could have used a voiceover later on saying,
Yeah,
like,
you could have.
explain to
while
me
I was
what
dreaming, this
happening?
happened?
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a very important question.
Ooh.
If you're starving and you see the baby parts form into the food, do you still eat the food?
No.
But you're
And I
starving.
probably would constantly throw up because I had eaten that food.
Let's put it so in the movie when she then the veil's lifted, so then she sees it. But let's say you don't see it, but you saw it happen. Baby parts into food. Do you eat them? but it looks like food again.
It's not such an easy call for me as it is CC.
Yeah.
It's delicious looking food. I mean, a ham.
Baby parts is also my favorite whole.
I mean, I would eat the rotten fruit before I ate that meat anyway. So
A whole ham
I
every
think
night?
it'd
Come
be
on.
fine.
I am baby parts.
I love that little. That. You know what, guys? We should mark that down. That is the first time Joe has ever impersonated Courtney Love on the show.
It's hard to believe, but here we are. Christ.
I loved that little that little like authenticity touch of when she's pointing out to the witch the inconsistencies in the food, like, oh, you know, plums only last these many days after being picked, and the ham isn't salted. Like, shouldn't it be going bad? I kind of like that.
I agree.
That was a nice little George Martin-esque like touch on there with like focusing on the food.
Well, we haven't hit on the acting. I mean, other than to say it was all, strong. The main character, the Gretel character, young Beverly from It. I did not put that together. I should have. I like recognized her vaguely, and then I was looking it up later.
I was trying to place her for the entire thing, and then as soon as I got out, it dawned on me.
Yeah.
What dawned on you?
Say that again.
What dawned? Sorry, I was.
The main actress is
she's from It.
Young Bev. Yeah.
Come on,
but the
she's
witch,
like the most recognizable like young woman actress in Hollywood. You guys seriously didn't immediately know who she was?
Get out of here!
Are you kidding me?
That's like.
Are you joking?
Have you seen Joey King?
There you go.
Beg your pardon?
All right,
Roasted.
fair.
Roasted.
Joe was like, "Wait a second." He turns to the person next to him he doesn't know in the theater. Like, that's not Joey King. Did Joey King dye her hair red and didn't tell me?
But
Oh, Lord.
the older witch, I don't know, the witch, I guess, not, I guess there's young witch too. I don't think, I mean, maybe we've seen her. She was like completely unknown to me. Eric, I think you mentioned she was a British actress of some kind. Have we lost Eric?
Yeah, so I was
think
listening
so,
to,
at
well, sorry, you guys are talking to me in the friggin' chat, all right? No, I was just listening to Mick Garris's podcast. He interviewed Oz Perkins, and I haven't finished it, but he was talking about the casting process, and yeah, she was basically he was just saying like, I try to go in without any preconceived notion of who I want or what I'm even looking for, and just try to like experience all of their auditions kind of raw. But she was interested in the role, and they asked her to send in a tape because she was in the UK, and so she sent in this tape where she was like full costume, creepy lighting, and just like really leaning into it. And he said he was immediately like, this is
Done.
a witch.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
She's South African.
Okay. Yeah, I saw
And
she was in Star Trek
4.
Generations or something.
Yeah. And Joe, she's in A Christmas Prince.
Oh, I think I may have seen that one. I think that was a Netflix
And-
joint.
A Christmas Prince, the royal baby.
Well, yeah, obviously. I mean, you got to be in the sequel.
Yeah, so big fan. The brother I was fine with. He,
His
I was
acting.
kind of rooting for him to get eaten.
It's
by the
been a
witch.
while since I had a child actor where I was just like, but he was borderline for me. I'll say that.
Yeah, I did love. At the end, he gets put on a horse, and my instant thought was, this kid should not be riding a horse right now.
Yeah.
Especially like
He
on his
couldn't
own.
even like hold the reins right, and I was like, "Ooh, this ain't good."
Yeah, like I don't want.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're getting into spoilers here, but like, just sending an 8-year-old off on his own on the back of a horse.
Well, I mean, technically she's a witch now, so she said she talked to the horse, and the horse is gonna get him there.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Yes, but like we've already established that like those woods are not safe.
Yeah.
I did like the sequence of him, or this shot of him pulling the axe out like that. I
Yeah.
picked up that symbolism, CC. That one I caught, and I
Yeah.
liked it. So
Interesting, bold choice for him to go back to the house where his mother tried to kill him like
Yeah.
weeks
it
earlier.
would have been great if they showed the mom just like dead, rotting carcass.
Yeah.
on the
Well, no,
ground.
like
should
he
have.
picks up the axe and then like bursts into the bedroom, and like we get the impression he's about to like just hack her into pieces.
Dude, see, okay.
That's darker.
All right,
That's
that
a
would have
little-
been awesome.
I've been taught how to make food out of people.
Because to me, the thing that makes more sense is that he finds, like, he keeps going on and finds, like, weren't they looking for, like, a group of foresters or something? Or, like, a group of people? Like,
Yeah, well, that's
Well, yeah, but I mean, really, the story actually with him going back to the house and like he drops this like bag of like gold or whatever on the table. Like that's kind of how the original Grimm's fairy tale ends, is
Oh,
that
okay.
like they find all this, all of these treasures, and then they live happily ever after.
Yeah.
So essentially, like
It's just a nod to the original
gets to
story,
live.
basically.
Yeah,
It's
it's
with
just
the-
a nod to that.
The dad was alive. It's the dad that's alive in the original, and the mom is not around, right?
Right, because they have a
Huh?
stepmom
Yeah,
in
okay.
in the
Ugh.
original.
Yeah.
You all right, Joe?
Yeah.
The stepmoms, huh?
What
Bad-
are you gonna do?
Bad memories.
Oh.
All right, guys. Let's wrap it up here. Would you recommend this and or in the theater, Cece?
Yes, and I say in the theater because it's visually amazing.
Joe,
I'd give it a wait till home video.
John.
Yeah, I'm with Joe.
Traitor.
I think this is gonna be ideally viewed
Shh,
with
Cece.
a fire in your
John's
fireplace.
Fireplace. Okay, Mr. Moneybags.
I mean, I
Um,
don't have a fireplace, but if you
that's
had
true.
one,
I
it would
do.
be
I do have a fireplace.
There you
Yeah.
go, Richie Rich over there.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say thumbs up on this, and I would see in the theater as much as I question their decision to put it into theaters. I love and think it's good to support
Ooh.
these weird little movies being in theaters. I will agree it's a little narratively rough around the edges, but I think just like stunningly visual film, just a fantastic score. I just love his vision. It's very unique. I don't think I've ever seen anything exactly like this, so I highly recommend it. So there you go. All right, guys. It's time to take a quick break and do some fan mail.
The mystery continues. Psycho 2. Rated R. Now playing at a theater near you.
Hi, this is Dana Roebuck from Everything You've Ever Seen on Television, and you're listening to Bloody Good Heart.
Send feedback to info@bloodygoodhorror.com or on Twitter using hashtag AskBGH. Join Patreon to get back episodes and much more. Patreon.com/bloodygoodhorror.
And we're back. Here we are, Joe. Let's do it. Let's look at my top
up,
10
man?
list. Let's look at my top 10 list for 2020.
All right. Currently you have Color of Our Space at number 1 and Underwater at number 2.
You mean Color Out of Space?
I think it's Color of Our Space.
No, it's definitely not.
I'm with Eric on this one, actually.
I agree to disagree.
It's a moot point, Joe, because I'm gonna name this so far the #1 horror movie of 2020.
Oh, yeah, I guess you're right. It is Color Out of Space, but I also just deleted this doc out of rage, so sorry. All right, so you
Uh,
put this at number 1 and everything just gets bumped down?
Yeah.
In my new world of just listing everything until we get, I'm gonna put this at number 2. For
On
those
your
of you who
list?
give a shit at home.
Yes. All right. As we mentioned earlier, it is February's Women in Horror Month. And Cece, what better way to celebrate than by picking up the latest issue of Grimm magazine? This is, of course, created, ran by Valeska, who's a BGH contributor. She has her own website, Anatomy of a Scream. And you are also pretty involved with this. Do you want to talk about the latest issue and what people can find in there?
Yes, so the latest issue is kind of paranormal based. There are a lot of, articles about paranormal movies, kind of, anything in that kind of realm. I know you need to I'm glad you're all sitting. My Father's Day essay that is now 3 years old has finally surfaced. And yes, it is in this issue. And I also did the cover of the magazine as well. You can go to Anatomy of a Scream and download a digital copy, or you can help support the magazine by becoming a sponsor or buying a print version.
Love
You
it.
also have a thing on ectoplasm in there, right? Like
Yeah. Oh, yes.
little-
And I have a little a little background essay about where ectoplasm comes from.
I used to
and
drink.
Adam, Space Lawyer, has an article in there also.
Joe, I used to drink ectoplasm in 2nd grade every day.
Ecto Cooler. Have you?
You could, yeah,
Cooler.
you could have written it.
We used to. We would have Halloween parties when we first moved to Illinois, and we made some like homemade Ecto Cooler. It's
What
very
the-
good. It's
what the-
97% sugar.
What the hell is in homemade ecto cooler?
I want to say it was like lime jello, but like
Ooh.
not chilled, obviously. Sugar, maybe I'd have to find the recipe. It's been a few years. but
already in on it.
it tasted pretty spot on. It was pretty good with rum also. So
Anything colored like bright neon green in the 90s was a pretty safe bet. It was going to be awesome.
I thought I remember seeing who's that guy on Twitter, Dinosaur, whatever.
Dinosaur Dracula. Yeah.
I thought I remember seeing him posting that they're actually going to re-release it, probably around the time that the new Ghostbuster movie is coming out.
John, you down with Dinosaur Dracula?
Unfamiliar,
Oh,
but
okay.
I am down with Ecto Cooler.
He's like the hardcore keeper of all like 80s, 90s nostalgia.
Yeah,
That's the only way I can describe him. Like he's the kind of guy who would go to eBay and buy a case of Ecto Cooler just to taste what it tastes like in 2020.
Yeah.
Well, like he doesn't want to just rely on his memory,
No.
or did he not live through that?
He
time?
doesn't want to leave that time, and that's what I love about him. Is he's
Ah, I
committed to
He
not
doesn't
leaving that
wanna
time.
leave that time.
I see.
Anyway, he's on
Okay.
Twitter. He's a cool dude. I like him. All right. Our very own Sophie wanted to let people know that they're doing the next Tweet with BGH Sunday, February 16th at 7 p.m. Eastern. They're going to be reviewing 2001's Valentine. Have you seen this, CC? I don't think you were here when we
I
were talking
have.
about it.
I also read that book.
Oh.
Oh, it's based on a
Wait.
book?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Stop.
It
It was a novelization of the film, you mean, or?
No, I'm pretty sure it was a book first, and then they made it a movie.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I read the movie before the book came out, so I don't know.
Well,
But anyway,
if you are, I'm sure John will be here to point it out. So
can't wait.
actually, he
look
was
forward to it.
Huntsman, just so you know.
So yes, I'm very excited because I enjoyed that movie as a teen, so I hope I'm
it
around
is.
to.
It says loosely based on a novel of the same name by Tom Savage.
No shit.
There
All
you go.
right.
Apology accepted for
No,
CC
hey,
John.
listen.
Tip of the hat.
Tip of the hat. My afternoon martini is enjoyable.
Look, it's like a slasher movie. I don't think it's crazy to.
Yeah, no, I
you
think
know.
John's assumption was fair.
It's like, really, to be honest, it's kind of like a trashier version of Kiss the Girls.
Mm,
Oh.
okay.
So,
I've always wondered what that would be like.
well, now you know.
If they trashed up Kiss the Girls.
What was this? Like if it was a little, I don't know, smuttier.
Because I think it's the guy David Borenzo or whatever, the guy who played Angel,
Mhm.
is like the main
David-
dude, I think.
David
Denise
what?
Richards and Katherine Hagel are both. in
Hold
it.
on. Can
Okay,
you say?
you got me now.
Cece, can you say that guy's last name again?
Nope. No.
Please.
I mean, no, that was an appropriate pronunciation in my book.
Berenzo.
Lorenzo
I don't know.
Lamas. My favorite.
I know it starts with the B. It has a Z in there, I
It's
think.
Boreanaz.
Was
It
there
does
a
in
diner in there? Were you calling from a walkie-talkie?
By Berenzo. That was amazing. That was a very schnarzy pronunciation. I got to give it to you.
I mean, I learned from the best, right?
Shamalama ding dong.
Denise Research, John, of Beverly Hills Housewives fame, as
Yeah.
I'm sure you would
There you
recognize
go.
her.
Speaking of trashy 90s slashers, do you guys remember Cherry Falls? Is that what it was called? Cherry
I
Falls.
mean, I'm
It
pretty
was-
sure I've seen a movie called that, but it was
It was a
not
movie
something-
starring Brittany Murphy, and it was starring Brittany Murphy. It was in like development hell forever. I think it ended up going to USA, but it was a slasher movie about basically it was late 90s, so it was all like, oh, if you'll get killed if you're a virgin, and so the kids in the town organize a giant orgy so that they can all come into get into this house, all lose
Yeah,
their
this sounds like the
virginity,
movie I saw.
all lose their virginity en masse. But it's like it's kind of become a cult thing because it was because it was in development hell and had this like kind of mythos about it.
Definitely did not see that.
The
Yeah.
Joe, the principal's played by Jay
I-
Moore.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with this movie
2000.
now that I've looked at the cover, but I've not seen it.
Same era as Valentine. That's what made me think of it.
All right.
All right.
Let's all go around and just say movies that we liked from her.
I mean, Joe, this is the section of the show to do exactly that. So what do you got? We got an email from Jimmy, info@bloodygoothorror.com. Jimmy wanted to let us know that we made his website's list of best horror podcasts, Joe.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah, what was
it's-
the... You have the name of it?
culturedvultures.com.
Yeah, we actually had a few people tweet us today that they picked up on that, so that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, we were like number 13, so... but...
Jimmy!
Barely made it.
Thanks, Jimmy. We appreciate
Honorable mention.
13 of 13.
Yeah,
Thanks, Jimmy.
you can check that out, culturedvultures.com. Next up, oh, Joe, I won't read this whole thing, but did you listen last week? This guy wrote in to let us know that Captain Lawrence Brewery has like 7 different Lovecraft-themed beers.
Oh, no, I haven't listened yet because
I didn't read his whole email because there's a slight error in this email of like, oh, I can't believe Joe didn't know that to recommend them on the Color Out of Space. You know, it was a little like, but anyway,
I mean,
there you go. I put it out
to
there.
be fair, it's like a local thing that I moved away from 8 years ago, so I'm sorry I'm not up to date with their full production line.
He also points out that Narragansett Brewery is in Rhode Island, where H.P. Lovecraft lived. So there you go. You ever had a
I
Gansett?
just assumed he was English.
Gansett?
Joe, you ever had a Gansett?
I think I have, actually. Yeah.
It is a trash beer. And one time at
Trash beer.
Fenway, I paid $14 for 2 of them.
Dear God.
And while I was walking up the stairs, tripped and spilled both of them
Wait, $14 total, so $7 each.
a piece after waiting
not-
a good
that's not
half an
awful.
hour.
Hmm.
For a person who never goes to baseball games, like this was maybe 8 years ago, and I'm still angry about it. So
I remember the last time I went to Yankee Stadium, and they were charging like $8 for a Bud. So,
Yeah.
it's disgusting.
and plus you had to drink it around a bunch of fucking Yankees fans.
Yeah. That's it for email.
Cool story, bro.
Twitter.
Yeah, we got some tweets, man. We use hashtag AskBGH. We're on the Twitterverse at BG Horror. Every week we post up. If you got a question or just need life advice or want some help, use the hashtag AskBGH and we'll get you going. First up, this is from I think shortly after the last episode. This is at Slenderest Gent. He asks a pointed question: are Kiss just boomer juggalos?
Yes.
Yes.
You know, it's funny he sent this actually because Joe, you and I were rapping on Friday. I was throwing on documentaries while I was working, and I put on what's it called, The Fall of Western Civilization.
Oh, The Decline of Western Civilization, Part 2, The Metal Gears.
Part 2, and like Gene Simmons is in this docu. I should preface this by saying that I hate Gene Simmons. Like he just seems like the
I'm right
worst
there with
person on earth, and like this documentary is so funny because it's all these young guys, like hair metal dudes, and then Gene Simmons, who clearly just like put the costume on and he's trying to act cool, but even then he was already just like old and not cool.
Yeah. I mean, that documentary, I've got to go back and watch it again. It is like
It's wild, dude.
classic.
I'm
It
definitely
is
throwing
so
it
good.
into the that's my favorite go-to. Like when I have a ton of work I got to bang through, I like to put on documentaries that I've already seen because it's just there's something like that lulls me, and that's going into the rotation hardcore.
It's great. I mean, in contrast, Paul Stanley, the lead singer of Kiss, I think he does all his interviews from just like a pile of women.
He's in bed with women all over him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like with it, the
I forget
camera's
guy's name,
literally-
but he was the guitar player for Wasp. Is just annihilated drunk in a pool while his mother is there. Like it's like classic.
Ah, meatloaf.
All right. Next up from our good friend at Coffee Bean Liver. If you were in a Gretel/Hansel situation, what food would the witch be able to lure you into her cabin with?
Pasta.
French fries and a lot like ketchup and other dips and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Probably like White Castles.
Pizza.
Like that would be. Yeah.
I'm simple. It's pizza.
Yeah, honestly, there's probably not a lot that I wouldn't go in there for.
It's just a bunch of edibles.
Yeah.
on a plate.
Oh, you've got a Caesar salad. Well, all right, fine, I'll go.
Caesar salad.
I mean, Caesar salads are delicious, right? Croutons.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe like a house salad with no croutons and Thousand Island dressing. I would be like, no, I'll pass.
That's your no. Okay.
Yeah.
Nah.
Yeah. All right, next up from our buddy Cody Yolo. If Freddy Krueger trapped you in a video game, what do you hope for, or what would be the worst? I guess what video game?
I
would
guess
you hope for?
I guess maybe we're referencing the Freddy's Dead here, where the dude gets trapped in the NES game.
As long as you have the Power Glove, I think the answer is any game's fine.
It's
You
so
forgot
bad.
about the Power Glove. I don't know. I love that movie. I actually think that movie's kind of brilliant.
Yeah, I don't know any game you would want to be trapped in or not be trapped in.
I've been playing. Have you guys ever played Overcooked? I've been
Yes.
playing Overcooked
I've seen
this
it.
week. Oh boy, I don't know if I'd want to be trapped in that. Actually, I'm gonna go no.
You're like in
Really?
you're like in a kitchen, and it's like a spinning plates kind of thing where you're trying to make dishes as fast as possible. So you got to get ingredients and then like put them into
it's
the right
but
order.
it's a collaborative game, and I've been playing it with my 5-year-old, who's for a 5-year-old I think decent at video games, but
It sounds like a
he's
nightmare.
5,
Yeah.
and I end up yelling at him during the game a lot. It's not good. We should probably stop.
You're grounded.
I
Make
don't
the
know.
soup. Make the soup.
I'm old. I don't. Doom. I feel like would be a nightmare.
That's all. Well, if you had the guns, like I don't know.
Yeah, but you're still like running around with fucking demons and shit. I don't know. Like you guys, I've never played it, but I assume that Animal Crossing would be fine to be trapped in. Like,
Oh, it seems like a delight.
it sounds sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
We
Okay.
lost. Her.
No.
That's fine.
That's fine. And then the next one from Cody Yolo. If you had a house of one candy/chocolate and had to live in it, what would you pick?
This is a
Oh.
great question. So
Why not just chocolate?
when I was a kid, many of my daydreams would revolve around having unlimited amounts of snack food
Oh,
at my disposal. So I had this specific daydream about where I would be in a room with a TV because was always watching TV as a kid. Lounge chair, feet up, and the entire room right up to like my arms is just filled with a snack food.
Yeah.
Typically
What was that snack food?
Doritos
Mhm.
or maybe like a cheese popcorn.
I would go Cheetos if it was like a snack.
Yeah, you know,
But I guess
Cece,
here's-
you know, you
yeah.
get the like Christmas tubs of popcorn. You get that delicious like
Yeah.
cheddar popcorn. You know.
I'll be honest, Eric. I work in an office where I do have unlimited
I
snacks,
hate
and
you.
it is just an endless fucking nightmare.
Yeah, no, you can't have food just free at your disposal all the time like that.
It's awful. Every day I try and resist, but they have this spicy, like, sort of pub mix with, like, it's like Chex Mix, but it's spicy also. It calls me from the kitchen every day, just hunting me. That's a fucking nightmare, guys. You don't know. Anybody
I think
else?
my house would be made of gushers.
Ooh.
How do you walk around on stuff? It's so squishy.
Well, that's
Just chocolate. That's gonna melt.
Yeah. Well, that's the question. Do you make your
Not
house
if
out
you're
of
just
something
like,
you'd
"Nyeh,
want,
nyeh," you know, eating.
and then you eat your house? Because Reese's
Yeah.
peanut butter cups would be the obvious answer. But then I'm gonna eat my house and be like out
Houseless.
out the
If you eat your house, you're dead, so it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah. So maybe I'd make it with something fucking awful, like Laffy Taffy, and then I'd be perfectly fine. Never be tempted. Banana runts. I would make my house out of banana
Oh
runts.
no. How about the apple Skittles? Because they used to be lime and now they're apple and I hate them.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't even know they made a change.
Yeah, it's gross.
Oof.
All right.
Okay.
Let's move on. Our friend Whitney, she writes in, that's at Wibney Pillies. I don't fucking know. You're walking through, I think this is pretty much the same question. You're walking through the woods and stumble upon a delicious looking house made of sweets and treats. What part of the house do you eat first? The peanut brittle roof, the gumdrop stepping stones, the candy cane fence,
This
etc.
this question made me think of this just gave me this really brought this memory back for me that I've always had this specific problem with Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, that the kids go in this room, the first big room, open room with all the candy right before the big musical number, and they're just like mowing down, okay? And it really disgusts me, the mushrooms with the like pools of whipped cream.
Whipped cream
These
in the middle.
kids are just whole hand, just right in there. No, like nobody washed their hand. Like the kids are sharing. It's like, and then I'm thinking, like, you ever put furniture in a room, right? How much dust covers a fucking room that just sits there? And now, like, that candy is dusty as hell.
Well, that's my exact thought. Like,
no,
you're
all
buying-
that's
it's-
new candy.
Yeah, it's being cleaned by the Oompa Loompas.
It's
Yeah, that's their
definitely
job.
not, John, because some of that candy is up pretty high. And
You
like,
think-
I don't want to
do you think-
sound ignorant.
Do you
but,
think dust
mm.
comes off of candy? Like candy is porous, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't. It's not like a wood surface you just
Yeah.
wipe dust off of.
See,
There's a river. It's humid in there. Like that
Ugh.
stuff's getting sticky.
It's
you
disgusting.
you went the wrong direction here. If you had been talking about a woods where there's just shit all over the place,
Oh,
but
yeah,
you
there's-
got a bunch of candy.
Shit.
Now I'm with you.
Well, yeah, no, I
Shell
think
over it.
what Eric is saying is like this wood scenario is like
A
even
nightmare.
worse. Than,
Yeah, totally. Works.
So nothing. I don't need
I
anything.
would brush the gumdrops off and totally eat them. Gumdrops are one of those things you never eat gumdrops, but then every once in a while you have a gumdrop and you're like, pretty good.
I like gumdrops. I like
Gumdrops, like my blood sugar's low and there's nothing else around.
I like a gumdrop. I like old timey candy. I love Necco wafers.
I'm okay with those.
How about the mint leaves that are basically just like huge ass
Oh,
gumdrops?
God,
You know,
those are delicious.
so
you
two-
don't have to brush your teeth after you eat those.
two things,
Those
Joe.
are-
My grandmother, my mother's side, always had those spearmint rounds, the like pink
Oh,
round
that's
things,
what
which I
you're
really
talking about.
loved. And then my grandfather was obsessed with they were called like Alpine mints or something. It was like
Oh yeah.
thin chocolate with the thin mint inside.
The tinfoil.
Oh,
wrapping.
yeah, I still get those for Christmas. They're delicious.
Do you really?
You and Eric's grandfather.
That's amazing. That was like I'd go up to their camp and
This
just
isn't a joke. When they announced that Necco was going out of business, I have about like 18 packs stashed upstairs.
that was a big story locally. I thought somebody bought the brand or something.
They bought. I think they bought the brand, but they haven't actually like that. They're
Made
not
it.
producing them anymore. I'm pretty
They
sure.
turned it's sex toys now.
Yeah.
To
It's,
be fair, I feel like we're in the minority as people who like Necco wafers.
I can tolerate a Necco wafer, but I don't go out of my way to find one.
Love 'em.
And if
Like,
there was a
I-
house, I wouldn't eat the Necco wafer part.
I used to go out of
Yeah.
my way. I legitimately got to know when like Twinkies were going out of business. Everyone's like, oh, like I'm up in arms. Like you haven't eaten a fucking Twinkie in
Yeah.
30 years. Like Necco wafers, I legit like enjoyed on like a monthly basis.
Except licorice ones. People who like licorice are straight psychos.
It was a subscribe and save from Amazon for you.
Yeah,
Necco
it was-
wafers.
Joe has a button on his cabinet.
Yeah.
Well, dude, I love licorice. I will
Oh.
eat like black licorice.
It makes
till
me
the
want
cows
to
go.
vomit. I can't even smell it. It's awful. I
Yeah.
have a visceral reaction to it.
Yeah. Well, I learned while watching a movie once that if you eat enough, you have like another reaction. But
What?
that's neither here nor there.
Black licorice makes me think of Jaeger and the time I tried to drink a stripper under the table and lost.
Mhm.
So.
I
Women
would
in
like
horror.
to hear
month.
this story for women in horror month. All right, we should move on. We got a few more here. Our old buddy COW Flanagan. Yo, if you was an action figure, what would your special feature be? For example, I think old John would. Oh God. I think old John would come with a button, cum, that make him so fancy. Would make him say fancy words. Cece would have a jar of dead animals she killed, and Joe would have an odor of account of him not washing below his privates.
All right, he brought
Pretty
me back. He
accurate.
brought me back around on this one. I like it.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to answer.
I don't
this,
have an
right?
answer, but you know what I loved when action figures had panels like damage panels. So like it's a guy's chest, but then it would flip around and he'd be beat
Yeah,
up, or
yeah.
like a
Oh
car.
yeah,
The
I have a
He-Man
bunch of
toys.
The
He-Mans
car
that-
doors would flip
Yeah.
and the car would be all beat up, like the micro machines or whatever. Those were
I
really
remember that. Yeah, yeah. The He-Man ones were cool because it actually had like two settings. Like if you hit it once, it was like a little damaged, and then you hit it again, flipped around more. Big fan. I have like a giant box of those still in my parents' house, and I gotta imagine the moment I finally pick those up, those rubber bands are just gonna like disintegrate, and everything's gonna fall apart. But I digest. Next up, our buddy Skizbot. What other fairy tale would you like to see reimagined by Oz Perkins? I could go for a demented Pinocchio.
I I thought there was a Pinocchio in the works, but I didn't think it was by Oz Perkin.
I don't really give a shit about Pinocchio, if I'm being honest. I don't really care. He sucks.
I mean, really, any of them. Like, Cinderella really needs to be done properly, where the stepsisters get their eyes plucked out by birds for the rest of their lives, and that they cut off their toes to fit into the glass slipper. Like, I'd really like to see that as opposed to this.
I might take this.
Specific.
I might take this time to recommend a little film called Snow White and the Huntsman.
Ugh.
I didn't see it. Was it
You
even
get right
good?
out of here. We covered it on this year podcast.
Kind of liked
It was not good.
No, it's
I disagree.
I'm with Joe. I'm actually in the almost exact same camp as Cece in that I'm fine with any reimaginings, and you know, if it's good, if it's interesting, I'm ready. I'll sign up. So
I don't know if it's a fairy tale, but I always loved Alice in Wonderland, and I would love to see like a more tripped out version.
Well, what's his name tried to do it, and
Yeah,
I actually never saw those, but
I thought I saw the first one and it was fine. Like I was pretty excited for it, but it didn't do much.
Tim Burton. That's what I was
There's
thinking.
some kind of
Cheapers.
nutty. There's some kind of nutty like fantasy fairy tale looking thing that's coming out. Gosh, I can't remember what it's called.
Well, I mean, it's funny, and we didn't talk about it during the review, but Del Toro is the obvious inspiration for some of this stuff. I mean, I actually think Oz Perkins went in a lot of different directions, but so just back to the question, they're all cool. I'm down. I like Pinocchio. That'd be pretty wacky.
Pinocchio. Oh, Pinocchio. Am I gonna see it on your face? Next up, our good friend Alyssa. That's at Lycanthropology. To piggyback off of Skizbot's question, what horror film would you want to see reimagined as a fairy tale? I don't understand how we would do that.
I don't either.
Travel back. I'm actually gonna go Freddy's Dead.
Freddy's Dead, directed by Rachel Talalay, John.
Women in Horror Month.
Exactly.
Hashtag feminism.
Yeah.
Ding.
Hashtag
Great job, guys. Great job.
Thanks, Cece.
Joe, would you like to
Hashtag
talk
Super Bowl
about?
halftime.
I was gonna say, would you like to
And
talk
you're
about some
welcome.
Super Bowl commercials, Joe?
What's that?
Would you like to talk about Super Bowl commercials?
Oh yeah, I would love to. I don't know. I mean, my favorite was the Groundhog Day one. I don't know if
I don't even
thought
think I saw that one.
you didn't see it.
I don't think so.
Really?
It was pretty good.
Bill
I mean,
Murray?
That one I did see. It was
Yeah.
toward the end. It was third or fourth quarter for sure.
It was third quarter, I think. Yeah. I mean, that was the standout. The Jason Momoa one I thought was super creepy, or whatever
Yeah.
the hell you say his name.
Yeah.
I thought the secret one was really bad. I think we talked about it before we started recording, but like it's the kicker and they kick the field goal and then takes off the helmet and reveals it's a woman, and like everyone in the audience is like,
Dude, it doesn't matter how cheesy it is. And we talked about this, but like ever since becoming a parent, the littlest hint of like sentimentality, and I'm just like,
I
Just
didn't get any
verklempt.
sentimentality in that. I got like a room full of male art directors sitting around like, yeah, let's pat ourselves on the back. We made this.
maybe it won't attract to Joe. You don't know.
Yeah. I loved the halftime show. I know, like, you know, Midwest white women are all up in arms about it, but
Wait,
I thought it was
who
amazing.
didn't like the halftime show?
A lot of like people are coming out saying like, "Oh, it's too sexy" and blah blah blah. Like,
I disagree.
you know.
There's no such thing.
Yeah, I'm with Eric.
I can
Yeah.
tell
Women in Horror
you.
Month.
I can
We
tell
can-
you, my
can end
upstate
this
New York father very much approved.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. I'm not going to regurgitate every meme, you know, talking about how Adam Levine was like shirtless last year, and you know the cheerleaders are. half
Which, by the
naked,
way,
too.
is a
Like,
site literally no one wants to see.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. He's a good-looking gentleman. I'm
Really,
not
I
gonna-
don't like him. Not a fan.
Wait,
Did I say
who?
Adam
Wait,
Levine? No, Adam. What the hell's his name?
Yeah,
For-
I said
Levine.
Avril Lavigne.
First of all, wasn't last year?
I'm so confused.
Wasn't
right
last
now.
year Timberlake, or was that 2 years ago?
I don't know.
Who's the Maroon 5 guy?
Adam Levine.
Adam Levine.
Oh yeah. Who's the guy that won American Idol and is now touring with Queen?
I think he's also Adam.
No, that's
No, it's Adam something.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Look, I thought the halftime show was actually pretty good, and you know, it was there's
Joe.
some good the production value on the dancing just really high.
Joe,
that
Ad-
floor with the waterfalls in it.
Joe, it's Lambert.
Adam Lambert.
that's
There you
it.
Yeah. Sorry, what'd you say, Eric?
Lambert.
Lambert. Yep. All right. Last but not least, from Chrissy Miss. Did you watch The Shrew's Nest or Bliss from Shudder?
No.
No. I mean, until Shudder gets a fucking download option, I can't watch anything on there.
Really?
Yeah,
Because you
I
watch in the
everything
train.
while I'm on the train.
Yeah.
And because I'm on the train, like the reception like goes in and out. And
Somebody did take me up on my recommendation of Haunt last week. I think Natalie said she checked it out and she liked it.
Shrew's Nest, really good Rotten Tomatoes score. I've never heard of it.
Look at you pronouncing words right, John.
Mm-hmm. It looks like a Spanish film.
oh, caliente.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
But yeah, we do need a movie next week, so I guess we can figure that out.
Ay, Dios míos. That's it, Eric.
Sick.
Thanks.
Info at bloodygoodhorror.com's email address. Don't forget, you can help support the show and get lots of goodies at patreon.com/bloodygoodhorror. Literally keeps the lights on, and you can get access to all our back episodes, all 550 something episodes, a live stream of the show every week, and our Slack community, which I think is safe to say is helping a lot of people get through the post-Halloween winter doldrums right now. So,
Am I allowed to say we have our first Slack romance? We have our first Slack couple?
yeah,
What?
let's just keep it at that.
Ew.
We'll tell Cece offline. But yeah, we're bringing people together, Joe. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Look, I'm sorry. I love Slack, but it's really hard for me to keep up with it.
Yeah, I've honestly had to like step back this week, and it's it's cleared up some space.
I would like that person to know that Joe was jealous that she told me first.
I'm just I thought it was odd that she told you at all. Like I don't know if I
That's
if
because
I found
that's because you don't have human emotions, Joe, like friendship and camaraderie.
I
He
don't
does,
honestly
but only for Kyle.
Yeah.
like 75% of my friends don't even know I'm married. Just like I go
Great.
home and that's it.
So yeah, as we discussed, we're not sure what we're doing next week. There is a thing in theaters. What's it called?
The Lodge.
Yeah, it looks interesting, but we're not sure how wide it's going to be. So it could be that. The best idea is always to follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter. Just search Bloody Good Horror. We'll show up on those, and that's always the way to get the most current information about what we're doing next. And of course, if you're in Slack, we're always talking about it. So there it is. That's going to do it, guys, for Gretel and Hansel. Hope you enjoy the show. We'll talk to you next week.
See you.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.